The slam of my father's door after I whispered, "I'm gay," at 16 echoed louder than any words could. That single moment didn't just end my parents' marriage. It sentenced me, Liam, to a lifetime bouncing between two homes where neither allowed the real me to exist. It happened in our modest suburban house outside Chicago on a humid Sunday evening. Mom had been setting the table with her usual careful precision, the roast chicken sending warm smells through the air, when the words finally tumbled out after months of rehearsing them in my head. Dad froze mid-bite, his fork hovering, and for one endless second the room held its breath. Then his face shifted from confusion to something harder, colder. He stood without speaking, grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, and slammed it so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Mom started crying before the engine even started outside. The divorce papers came exactly 57 days later, citing irreconcilable differences, but the lawyers and judges and neighbors all knew the real reason. I became the kid who broke his own family. By 24, I had perfected the art of living in halves. Weekends split between Dad's cramped apartment downtown, where he filled every conversation with sports scores and pointed reminders about real men, and Mom's quiet bungalow in the suburbs where she smiled too brightly and changed the subject whenever my personal life edged into view. I learned to edit myself in real time, laugh at Dad's crude jokes even when they made my stomach turn, nod along while Mom talked about her book club friends' straight sons getting married. Chicago itself felt like the only neutral ground, its skyline of glass and steel offering anonymity in the crowds. I worked as a graphic designer for a mid-size ad agency in the Loop, spending my days creating sleek logos and campaign visuals that sold products I didn't care about. The pay was decent, the hours long enough to keep my mind occupied. The annual company mixer that June changed everything. The rooftop bar overlooking the river was packed with colleagues in business casual, string lights twinkling against the pink sunset. I stood near the railing nursing a ginger ale, watching the boats glide below when Noah approached. He was the new marketing coordinator, tall with warm brown eyes and an easy smile that reached them fully. "You look like you're plotting an escape route," he said, extending a hand. "Noah. First month here. You, Liam. Graphic design." Escape route sounds accurate. We laughed, and the conversation flowed without effort. He talked about growing up in a small town in Michigan, moving to the city for the energy, the way the lake made him feel alive. I found myself sharing more than I intended. Favorite museums, the best deep dish spots, how the winter wind off the lake could cut straight through you. He listened like every word mattered. When the party wound down, he suggested grabbing coffee the next week. I said yes before my brain could warn me about the risks. That first coffee turned into lunches, then evening walks along the river walk. Noah had this way of seeing through the careful mask I wore. He noticed when I tensed at certain topics, never pushed, just waited. One night in early July, we sat on a bench in Millennium Park watching the bean reflect the city lights. "You ever feel like you're carrying something heavy and can't put it down?" he asked quietly. I nodded, throat tight. He didn't press for details. Instead, he told me about his own struggles coming to terms with who he was back in high school, the quiet support from his mom, the distance from his dad. For the first time in years, I didn't feel completely alone in the weight. But even as our friendship deepened, the old fears crept in. Dad called midweek demanding I attend his company's 4th of July barbecue. "Bring a girl this time, Liam." People ask. Mom texted asking if I was seeing anyone special, then quickly added she just wanted me happy, no pressure. I answered both with vague replies and spent the evening staring at my ceiling, heart racing at the thought of introducing Noah to any part of that fractured world. He deserved better than half a boyfriend who lived in constant translation. Still, when he texted the next morning suggesting a weekend hike in the Indiana dunes, I agreed. The lake breeze and his laughter made the weight feel lighter, if only for a few hours. By late summer, our connection had shifted into something undeniably romantic. A brush of hands walking home from dinner, a lingering hug goodbye that neither of us wanted to end. One Friday night after a movie, we stood outside my apartment building under the street lamp glow. "I really like you, Liam," Noah said simply. More than like. My pulse hammered. I wanted to say it back, wanted to pull him close and finally stop hiding. Instead, I mumbled something about needing time, kissed his cheek, and watched him walk away looking hurt but understanding. Inside, I slid down the door and pressed my palms to my eyes. How could I drag him into the mess of my two worlds when neither one had room for us? The following weeks tested me more than I expected. Work projects piled up, Dad scheduled an unexpected visit. Mom started hinting at family therapy sessions she found online. Noah remained patient, sending funny memes during the day and respecting my space at night. One evening, he surprised me with tickets to a Cubs game, knowing how much I loved baseball as a kid. We sat in the bleachers, shouting at the umpires, sharing a pretzel, and for 3 perfect hours I let myself imagine a life where this could be normal. When he leaned over during the 7th-inning stretch and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere," something inside me cracked open. Maybe, just maybe, there was space for both parts of me after all. But the universe had other plans. The email from my mother arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was finalizing a client presentation. "Liam, your father and I are both coming to the city next weekend for your cousin's engagement party. We haven't been in the same room since the divorce, but for family. Please be there. Love, Mom." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Noah was supposed to meet my extended family eventually, but not like this. Not with both parents present and the old wounds still raw. I texted him the news, keeping it light. His reply came instantly, "Whatever you need. I'm here." The engagement party was at a downtown hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over white tablecloths and distant relatives I barely recognized anymore. I arrived early, heart hammering, wearing the navy suit Noah had helped pick out 2 days earlier. He waited for me in the lobby, looking sharp in charcoal gray, his smile steadying me. "We don't have to tell them anything tonight," he said, squeezing my hand once before letting go. "Just enjoy the night." Inside, Mom spotted us first. She hugged me tightly, then turned to Noah with genuine warmth. "You must be the friend Liam's mentioned. So nice to meet you." Dad arrived 20 minutes later, his jaw tightening when he saw us standing together. He shook Noah's hand with forced politeness, then pulled me aside near the bar. "That your roommate?" he asked under his breath. I swallowed hard. "No, Dad. He's important to me." The words hung there. Dad's face darkened, but he didn't cause a scene, not with aunts and uncles watching. Instead, he spent the rest of the evening on the far side of the room, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Later, on the dance floor, Noah pulled me close during a slow song. The lights dimmed, and for a moment the world narrowed to just us. "You did good tonight," he murmured against my ear. "I'm proud of you." My chest ached with something warm and terrifying. When the song ended, I led him outside to the terrace overlooking the river. The city sparkled below us. "I want this," I told him. "Us. For real." He kissed me then, soft and sure, and the fear that had lived in my bones for 8 years finally felt smaller. The next morning, reality crashed back. Dad called at 7 a.m. "We need to talk." Alone. I met him at a diner near his hotel. He stirred his coffee for a long minute before speaking. "Your mother and I didn't raise you to throw your life away on choices like this. That boy, Noah, he's nice enough, but he's not what you need. Think about your future, Liam. Kids. Grandkids. A normal life." His voice cracked on the last word. I sat there, fork frozen above my eggs, feeling 16 again. "This is my normal, Dad. This is who I am." He left without finishing his meal. Mom texted later that afternoon, voice note shaky. "Your father told me. I'm trying, honey. I really am. But seeing you two together last night brought up so many memories of how we fell apart. Give me time." The guilt settled heavy on my shoulders. Noah noticed the change in me immediately. We were supposed to meet for dinner, but I canceled, claiming work. He showed up at my door anyway with takeout tie and a patient smile. "Talk to me." So I did. I told him about the diner, the voice note, the way both my parents still saw my happiness as a threat to their peace. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me into a hug. "They're processing. We knew this wouldn't be easy. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore." That night we stayed up late talking about everything. My childhood memories of holidays split down the middle. The first time I realized I liked boys and how terrifying it felt. The dreams I had buried because they didn't fit either parent's version of success. Noah shared his own stories, the college boyfriend who broke his heart, the way his sister had become his biggest supporter. By morning, I felt lighter, like the two worlds inside me were finally starting to overlap instead of collide. Work kept us both busy the following week. A big campaign deadline loomed, and Noah and I stole moments between meetings, quick texts, shared lunches in the park. One afternoon, my coworker Jake, who I'd always considered a casual friend, cornered me in the break room. "Saw you and Noah at the engagement party. You two seem close." His tone was casual, but something in his eyes made me pause. I shrugged. "Yeah, we're dating." Jake nodded slowly. "Cool, man. Just. Your dad called the office yesterday asking about you." Seemed concerned. My blood ran cold. I hadn't given Dad the agency number in years. That evening I confronted Dad over the phone. "Why are you calling my work?" He didn't deny it. "I worry about you, son. That lifestyle, it leads to loneliness. I just want what's best." The conversation ended in raised voices and me hanging up first. Noah found me pacing the living room later, fists clenched. He didn't offer empty reassurances. Instead, he said, "Let's take a weekend away. Just us. Clear our heads." We booked a cabin up north near Door County. The drive was quiet at first, then filled with music and stories. By the time we reached the lakefront cabin, the tension had eased. The weekend was perfect. Long hikes through pine forests, evenings by the fire roasting marshmallows, mornings tangled in sheets with sunlight streaming through the windows. No parents, no expectations, just us learning each other's rhythms. On the last night, Noah turned to me by the water's edge. "I love you, Liam. Not despite the complications. Because of who you are in spite of them." The words settled over me like a blanket. I said them back, voice steady for the first time. The lake reflected the stars, and for those few days the two worlds felt distant enough to ignore. But Monday brought the storm. Jake was waiting by my desk when I returned to the office. His face was pale. "Liam, I need to talk to you." Privately, we stepped into the empty conference room. "Your dad called me directly last Friday. He said he was worried about your situation and asked if I knew anything. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I mentioned seeing you and Noah together at the party. I thought he already knew." The room spun. Dad had used my own coworker to confirm what I had already told him. Betrayal burned hot in my chest. "Why would you tell him anything?" Jake stammered apologies, but the damage was done. I left work early, heart pounding. Noah met me at my apartment after a frantic text. I told him everything, watching his expression shift from concern to quiet anger. "He had no right," Noah said. "But more importantly, how are you feeling?" I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to drive to Dad's place and demand he stop interfering. Another part wanted to crawl into bed and disappear. Noah stayed the night, holding me when the anger turned to tears. "We faced this together," he whispered. The next morning, Mom called. "Your father is beside himself. He thinks I'm encouraging this. Liam, maybe we should all sit down, the three of us." The idea terrified me. Still, I agreed. We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown on a rainy Thursday. Dad arrived first, jaw set. Mom looked exhausted. I sat between them like a referee in a match that had already been lost years ago. "I love Noah," I said before either could speak. "He's not a phase. He's my partner." Dad stared into his black coffee. "I can't support that, son. It goes against everything I believe." Mom reached for my hand, but stopped halfway. "I want to understand. I really do. But seeing you choose this life when we worked so hard." Her voice broke. The conversation circled for an hour, accusations and defenses flying until I stood up. "I'm not choosing between you two or between you and Noah. I'm choosing me." I walked out into the rain, Noah waiting under an umbrella across the street. He didn't ask for details. He just opened his arms. That night we cooked dinner together in his apartment, the simple act of chopping vegetables and laughing over spilled sauce feeling like rebellion. But the secret was fully out now, and the consequences rippled outward. Dad stopped answering my calls. Mom sent long emails filled with articles about lifestyle choices and links to support groups. At work, Jake avoided eye contact. Whispers followed me in the hallways. Noah's presence became my anchor. He took me to his sister's house for a quiet barbecue, introducing me as his boyfriend without hesitation. His family welcomed me with open arms, asking about my design work and teasing Noah about his terrible cooking. For the first time, I saw what acceptance could look like. Yet the pull of the old worlds remained strong. One weekend, Dad showed up unannounced at my building. "I drove all night," he said when I opened the door. "We need to fix this." He sat on my couch, hands clasped, and for 2 hours he talked about his own father, the values passed down, the fear that I would end up alone and regretful. I listened, really listened, and then I showed him pictures of Noah and me on our Door County trip. "This is my life now, Dad. I'm not broken." He left without promising anything, but he didn't slam the door. Small progress. Noah and I celebrated that small victory with a spontaneous trip to the Art Institute. We wandered the galleries hand in hand, stopping in front of a large abstract painting that seemed to capture every emotion swirling inside me. "This is us," Noah said softly. "Messy colors, but beautiful when you step back." I leaned into him, the scent of his cologne familiar and safe. In that moment, the two worlds didn't feel quite so impossible to bridge. The real test came 2 weeks later when Mom invited both of us to her house for Thanksgiving. "I want to try," she wrote. "Bring Noah." The invitation felt like a lifeline and a landmine at the same time. Noah squeezed my hand when I told him, "We'll go at your pace." Preparations filled the weeks with nervous energy, buying wine, practicing conversation topics, me rehearsing explanations in the mirror. The night before the drive, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Noah turned to me in the dark. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we leave together." His certainty steadied me. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and cold. We packed the car with pies and flowers. As we pulled onto the highway, I glanced at Noah in the passenger seat, sunlight catching his profile. For the first time, the road ahead didn't feel like it was splitting in two directions. It felt like it was leading somewhere new. Mom's house looked exactly as I remembered. White shutters, maple tree in the front yard now bare for winter. She opened the door before we even reached the porch, her smile tight but genuine. "Come in, both of you. Dinner's almost ready." The smell of turkey and sage wrapped around us. Noah shook her hand warmly, complimented the decorations, and within minutes they were chatting about her garden club. I watched from the doorway, chest tight with hope and fear. Dad had declined the invitation, but his absence loomed larger than his presence ever did. Mom set an extra place at the table anyway, a silent acknowledgement. We ate, conversation flowing carefully around politics and work. Noah told stories about his marketing campaigns that made Mom laugh, really laugh, for the first time in years. When she asked about his family, he answered honestly, mentioning his sister's recent engagement and how welcoming they had been to me. Mom's eyes flicked to me, softening. "I'm glad you have that support." After pie, we moved to the living room. Mom pulled out old photo albums, flipping through pages of me as a gap-toothed kid. "You were always so sensitive," she said quietly. "I should have seen it sooner." Noah sat beside me on the couch, his knee pressing gently against mine in silent encouragement. I told her about the nights I cried myself to sleep after the divorce, the way I learned to hide pieces of myself to keep the peace. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I failed you, Liam. Both of us did. For the first time since I was 16, the three of us, or at least the two of us present, sat in the same room without the air feeling poisoned." The drive home that night was quiet in the best way. Noah drove while I stared out the window at the passing fields. "That was progress," I said finally. He smiled. "Yeah, small steps." But small steps didn't prepare us for the email that arrived Monday morning from Dad's lawyer. It contained documents about the house I had inherited a portion of after the divorce settlement, documents suggesting Dad wanted to sell it and cut me out unless I reconsidered my choices. The legal language was cold, clinical. I read it 3 times before the words sank in. Noah found me at the kitchen table, head in my hands. He read the email over my shoulder, then set his jaw. "We fight this together." We spent the evening researching family law, calling a lawyer friend of his sister's. The next day, I confronted Dad over the phone. "You're really doing this? Using the house to control me?" His voice was tired. "I'm trying to save you from yourself, son." The call ended in silence heavier than any slam of a door. Work became a refuge and a battlefield. Jake apologized again, but the damage to our friendship was done. Other colleagues offered cautious support, but the whispers continued. Noah dealt with it by throwing himself into planning a small Christmas party at his place. Just close friends, no family pressure. I helped decorate, stringing lights while he hummed off-key carols. On Christmas Eve, we exchanged gifts by the tree. He gave me a custom sketchbook with my name embossed on the leather. For all the designs you haven't dared to draw yet, the ones that are truly you. I gave him a framed photo from our dunes trip, the two of us laughing on the beach. For the man who showed me I don't have to choose halves anymore. But the new year brought fresh complications. Mom called one January evening sounding panicked. Your father had a minor heart scare. He's in the hospital. He keeps asking for you. I drove through a snowstorm to be there, Noah insisting on coming along. In the sterile hospital room, Dad looked smaller, tubes snaking across his chest. When he saw us both, his eyes widened, but he didn't send Noah away. You came, he rasped. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally he spoke. I don't understand it, Liam. But I don't want to lose you either. It wasn't acceptance. It was a crack in the wall. The months that followed tested every boundary we had built. Legal negotiations over the house dragged on. Mom started attending a support group for parents of LGBTQ children. Noah and I moved in together in March, turning his apartment into our home with my design posters on the walls and his plants crowding the windowsills. Life settled into a rhythm of shared mornings, late-night talks, and quiet victories. Yet the undercurrent of family tension never fully disappeared. One warm April evening, Noah and I walked along the lakefront. The city lights reflected on the water like scattered diamonds. Whatever happens with your parents, he said, stopping to face me, this, us, is real. And it's enough. I kissed him right there on the path, not caring who saw. For the first time, the two worlds didn't feel like prisons. They felt like chapters one was finally allowed to write myself. Summer arrived with relentless heat and a turning point none of us saw coming. The agency landed a major account that required a cross-country presentation in Los Angeles. Noah and I were both assigned to the team. The trip felt like a reward, 5 days in California away from Chicago's drama. We spent evenings walking Venice Beach, sharing street tacos, and talking about the future we wanted to build. On the flight home, I rested my head on his shoulder and realized I hadn't checked my family group chat in days. The peace felt fragile, but real. Landing back at O'Hare shattered it. Mom's voicemail waited on my phone. Liam, call me. It's urgent. Her voice trembled. When I called, she told me Dad had been hospitalized again, this time with chest pains that turned out to be stress-related. He asked for you specifically. And he wants to meet Noah. Properly. The request stunned me. Noah squeezed my hand when I relayed the news. We'll go whenever you're ready. The hospital visit 2 days later was tense. Dad sat up in bed, pale but determined. He looked at Noah for a long moment. I don't pretend to understand, he said finally. But I see how you look at my son, and how he looks at you. Maybe that's enough for now. Noah answered with quiet respect, sharing stories that made Dad chuckle despite himself. When we left, Dad shook Noah's hand. Take care of him. 3 words that carried the weight of years. The legal battle over the house resolved in July. The judge ruled in my favor after mediation, citing emotional duress. Dad didn't fight the final decision. Instead, he sent a short text. Congrats on the house. Maybe we can talk sometime. Mom organized a small family dinner to celebrate. Just the 4 of us, including Noah. Conversation was stilted at first, but warmed as the evening progressed. Dad even asked Noah about his marketing work. Small steps, but steps forward. Yet peace never lasts without challenge. Jake, still awkward around me at work, accidentally forwarded an internal email thread to the entire department, one that included private comments from Dad's earlier calls questioning my stability. The office buzzed. My boss pulled me aside, assuring me it wouldn't affect my position, but the humiliation burned. Noah found me in the stairwell after work, tears of frustration hot on my face. I'm so tired of being the topic, I admitted. He held me tight. Then let's stop hiding anywhere. Let's live out loud. That weekend we hosted our first joint dinner party. Friends from work, Noah's sister and her fiancé, even Mom. The apartment filled with laughter and good food. Dad declined the invitation but sent a bottle of wine with a note. To new beginnings. As the night wound down, Noah and I stood on the balcony watching the city lights. I love this life we're building, I told him. He smiled. Me too. Every messy, beautiful piece. August brought the biggest test yet. Mom received a letter from Dad's attorney suggesting joint counseling, not to reconcile their marriage, but to learn how to co-parent an adult son whose life they both still struggled to accept. The three of us attended the first session together. The counselor asked hard questions. I spoke about the years of feeling caught in the middle, the guilt that still lingered. Mom cried. Dad stared at the floor, but stayed the full hour. Noah waited outside, ready to listen when I emerged drained but lighter. They're trying, I told him. That's more than I ever expected. By September, the leaves were turning, and our relationship had deepened into something solid and undeniable. We talked about moving to a bigger place, maybe adopting a dog, planning a trip to Michigan to visit Noah's family for Thanksgiving. Life felt full. The two worlds that once tore me apart were slowly knitting together into one imperfect but authentic whole. Then the secret I thought was buried resurfaced. Jake approached me in the parking garage after work one crisp October afternoon. His face was drawn. Liam, I need to tell you something. When your dad called me last year, I didn't just mention the party. I told him about the time I saw you and Noah kissing outside the office. I thought I was helping by giving him context. I was wrong. I'm sorry. The confession hit like a punch. All the progress with Dad suddenly made sense. The reluctant acceptance, the hospital visits, the wine bottle. He had known intimate details because my own coworker had betrayed my privacy. I drove home in silence, mind racing. Noah listened without judgment when I told him. What do you want to do? He asked. The answer surprised even me. I want to forgive Jake. And I want to thank Dad for choosing love over pride anyway. The next day I met Jake for coffee and accepted his apology. Then I called Dad. I know what Jake told you, I said. And I'm glad you still reached out. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Seeing you happy. It scared me less than losing you completely. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Mom joined us for a long weekend in Door County that November. The four of us, Mom, Dad, Noah, and me, walked the beach together, the lake wind whipping our jackets. We didn't solve every issue. Dad still avoided certain topics. Mom still worried. But we laughed. We shared stories. We existed in the same space without it feeling like a battlefield. Noah held my hand openly, and no one flinched. Back in Chicago the week before Christmas, Noah and I decorated our new apartment, the one we'd chosen together with big windows overlooking the river. As we hung the final ornament, he turned to me. 8 years ago, a door slammed shut on your old life. Tonight, I'm grateful it led you here. I pulled him close, the city sparkling beyond the glass. The journey hadn't been linear. There had been misunderstandings that nearly broke us, secrets that exploded in painful ways, betrayals that tested loyalties, and sacrifices, time, pride, comfort, that forced every one of us to grow. But each decision, each consequence, had carved out space for the man I was always meant to be. On Christmas morning, Noah handed me a small box. Inside was a keychain engraved with coordinates, the exact spot on the Chicago River Walk where we had our first real conversation. For all the places we'll still go, he said. I kissed him under the mistletoe, heart full. The two worlds had merged. Not perfectly, not without scars, but completely mine. True or false, family acceptance is essential for true happiness and love.